Okay, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Mangging for our Call of Cthulhu campaign of Horror on the Orient Express. And yeah, we're still not on the Orient Express, might I add. But soon. Very, very soon. This time, since it is Easter today, it's a holiday-ish, we had a limited number of players. We actually only had 3. We had Killian, Pritchard, and Luton. And so we were planning to do a shorter session either way, but since we only had 3, it made even more sense. So I told them, they're like, okay, we'll do it with 3 players, we'll do a shorter one, but the only stipulation is you can't leave France. Meaning, you can't get on the Orient Express, because I wanted the moment when the group gets on the Orient Express, I wanted everyone to be there. Now, next week, when they do get on the Orient Express finally and leave France, I don't know if Dingleberry will be there, because he usually shows up late. But I'll accept 4 out of 5, I guess. That's Dingleberry's problem. So we can't leave France. So they calculated their options, and we picked it up right where we left off in the last one, where Killian picked up the left arm of the simulacrum. And this kind of mist... This mist flowed into this underground cellar and kind of swirled around them, and it was unnaturally cold. And they didn't really do much about it. And then it kind of just swirled around them, and then it just left just as quickly as it came. And so they went back into the house. They thanked Christian, and they asked if they could take the artifact, and he's of course, And they noticed that. His wife's arthritic hand seemed to be moving a bit more freely than it was yesterday. I mean, it's still arthritic and everything, but I don't know. It seemed to move a bit more loosely. Anyways, so they departed from Poissy. They went back to Paris, and it was pretty late, so they hit the hay. They confronted Luton about kind of, him betraying them and him leaving them to die and, stuff like that and be arrested and all sorts of stuff like that. And he's like, Dingleberry and I were arrested as well. And, yeah, I mean, Luton and Dingleberry didn't really sell out the guys at all, so not on the level of Ali Shaw. So, they basically, Killian and Pritchard don't respect Luton at all. They don't really like him, but I think they value his skills, both in-game and out-of-game, so they'll keep him around for now. Okay, so the next morning then, Killian and Pritchard were going to stop by and visit Arthur Butters and then visit Remy, and Luton was going to the library to do some research about the simulacrum, if possible. So Pritchard and Killian go to Arthur Butters' house. They knock on the door. No response. They try the door handle. It's unlocked. So they go in, and they smell smoke. Yeah, they got worried real fast. So Pritchard immediately runs downstairs, and he sees the train set all set up still with a thin layer of soot all over the place. Killian looks around, he finds a note on the kitchen table that says, "My dear train appreciating friends, I'm about to attempt the ritual that Mr. Stanley conducted. If I am dead or missing, I leave my trains to you." Like, I don't know why he would leave it to them instead of, a part like anybody else, but he left it to them, I guess. It was a funny throw-in line, whatever. It's sort of like, oh, shit. And so, they kind of had 2 different, mindsets here between Killian and Pritchard. Pritchard wanted really nothing to do with this. He assumed that Arthur Butters, much like Henry Stanley had been combusted and was dead, and they should just leave this all behind and just move on. And Killian was like, I'm curious, let's check this out. And so Pritchard then, Ziggy, basically, he tries to say that he's being very much in character. And in character, Pritchard, you wouldn't bother with any of that, he would just stay away from all this. And it's like, if you're going to follow that train of thought, Pritchard would be, back, he would have never left London. Or at the first sign of weird stuff or anything like that, he would have just be gone home. And, Pritchard in character would have not tried to break into an asylum and then kick some guy in the face and break his nose and evade police custody. I talked about this a whole bunch in Secrets of Role Mangging, and I don't know why I have to keep talking about it, but I have to imagine there are groups out there of players that are 100% role-playing in character. Everything that during a session that comes out of their mouths is in character, and they are fully invested. There's no meta anything. And I would never, ever want to play with a group like that. But, those groups are fine. They can exist. I just don't want to be near them. And I'm not going to tell people how to play the game. Of course not. But it's be reasonable. It's when it comes down to it, it's do you want to play or not? And so, for this session, it came to not, as you'll see, but hold on. Okay, so basically, Pritchard went upstairs while Killian fired up the train to try and run it for a while to see if, the ritual happened. And I was like, I basically, something's going to happen. You're going to go on, you're going to go on something's going to happen here. This is the session. And so Luton was going to be off at the library the whole time. So I told him, I was like, you can show up. I'll let you show up. It's very meta. I'm okay with metagaming. For a lot of convenience, I was at the start of the session, I was like, yeah, Luton is there in the cellar with you. He was there the whole time, whatever. It's just sometimes you just gotta hand wave some shit just to keep a game running functionally and entertaining. So you can be there, you can show up and join in on this, or if you really just want to go to the library and just listen the whole time, I leave the option to you. And so he's like, yeah, sure, I'll say that I was needed to ask them a question and knew they were going to this place. So he shows up, and of course the ritual gets started from Killian firing up the train. So the track starts shimmering, and there's a bunch of steam that appears, and the house starts rumbling. So the other two run down to the basement. They're all down there, and the train appears. The Doom Train, as it's called, comes rushing in through one of the walls of the basement, and it's spectral, so it passes through all the objects. It doesn't break anything. But it passes right through one of the walls of the basement, keeps going through the other wall, and it keeps traveling through until finally it rolls to a stop with the first passenger car right in front of them. And they lose some sanity witnessing this because it's pretty crazy. And out of the first carriage come a bunch of people dressed in 1890s clothing. And they kind of glide off of the train a little bit, and they start asking all these, very benign train trip-related questions. What time do we reach Liverpool? So what's the delay? Blah, blah, blah. And they ignore any answers that the people, the investigators give. And they start swarming the person that, flipped the switch on the train set. And they start speaking in one voice, or come with us, come with us. And the person is powerless to resist. He just has to go with them. And he gets dragged aboard the train. And now he's suddenly in 1890s clothing as well. and the train starts firing up again. So they're, the other investigators, their friend is basically about to be kidnapped by whatever is going on. And so Pritchard, in his moment of heroism, runs up the stairs and out into the street. And it's not like I can say, I mean, yeah, if I really wanted to be a jerk, I could just be like, no, you can't help it. You have to go on, you can't resist. You go on the train. I'm not going to be like that, because then it's just like, I'm going to tell you what all your characters are going to do, and you're powerless. Like, that's not what this is. So if he wants to run out, sure. Luton kind of debated about it for a little bit, and then he decided to jump on the train as well. And the train disappeared into another dimension. And so Luton and Killian were off on an adventure in another dimension on a train, and Ziggy spent the rest of the session listening. I can't... I mean, I'm not going to spell things out for people. I can't be like... I can't just say, you're not going to die on this little adventure. This is the session. Just go along for the ride. You'll have fun. I can't do that. That breaks the whole thing. I can't be like, you're going to find Mehmet Makrad at this location, and this mist is this, and, you should go here. Like, I can't, no, that's not what this is. That's not what happens. This isn't a book. This is an RPG. People make choices, and then they deal with it. And maybe he was fine with the fact that he listened in, because he didn't suffer any health damage or sanity loss or any of that kind of stuff. He just listened in. But if you just want to listen in to other people's adventures, that's what this is. Now, some of the people watching this, I'm sure, given the option, they would prefer to just listen to this rather than playing a campaign. But I am always of the mindset that actually being there and warping the campaign and the session and everything around your actions and stuff, that's what it's all about. If you have the option of affecting the campaign, playing in it, being a part of it, that's what you do. That's why you're here. So, I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know if he's going to watch this, so I guess it doesn't matter. I'm not going to really lecture him, off camera or anything like that. It's just... like, he was so of the mindset that I was just going to kill them. Like, you're just going to die. And I'll spoil it for you right now. Neither Luton nor Killian die in this session. They don't even really get harmed that bad. They don't even lose that much sanity. They just kind of had a fun little mini adventure. That's what this is. Now, I know, from the Mask campaign, he's got kind of a history. He has experiences where I was cruel in some sense. And I wasn't afraid to kill off investigators and stuff like that. And I said I was going to try to change because I really want it to be like a movie. That's really what I kind of want to go for. And there are different types of movies. I mean, yes, I could run this like a horror movie, in which case at any moment any character could pretty much die unless they have plot armor, but I'm not going to pick an investigator to have plot armor unless it's Reginald Steinway. But I think campaigns of this magnitude and of this type are much pulpier than a horror movie. And Masks more so than this, but this is a little bit. So really just think of it like The Mummy or Indiana Jones or something like that, where it's like it's very thrilling and exciting and there's crazy situations. And you're watching it, and you're like, you know that they're gonna make it through. You know that Indiana Jones is not gonna die, but it's still thrilling. It's still there's still that sense of excitement, unless you're the type of person that's just like, well, he's not gonna die, so what's the point? He's just gonna beat everybody up and save the day and whatever. I mean, this probably isn't the type of thing for you then, I guess. But for most normal people, when they watch a movie like The Mummy or something like that. They're like, oh man, they just barely made it through. So exciting. That's the type of feel that I want to, elicit from a Call of Cthulhu campaign. Now, yes, it's not exactly like a movie because they're going to make their own choices. They can make stupid choices. They could die. I'm not saying this is a deathless campaign. People will die at some point. I'm pretty damn sure. But I want it to just be more go on the adventures. Just have fun with it. Like, don't be so concerned about your survival. I don't know. Again, I'm changing my mentality a little bit from the Mask campaign, and I really think it's for the better. But I can only do so much. So anyways, Ziggy, it was really a two-man session, basically. It was Luton and Killian aboard this Doom train in another dimension. Okay, so they pass into the other dimension, and Killian is still being kind of swarmed by all these basically zombies. They're basically mindless zombies that are trying to grab him. And so Luton has just jumped on, and he's on the other side of the carriage, and he sees Killian being swarmed by these things that are trying to, grab his head and, kiss him, basically. They're trying to kiss him to suck out his soul, more or less. That's not good. You don't want that to happen. Fortunately, they're pretty slow and clumsy, but if they do lock lips, done. So Killian tries to swing open the door to the next carriage, but he fumbles it and he gets grabbed. So he's got this zombie is got him like this, and he's trying to you can imagine if you've ever had to kiss your grandma or something. Anyways, that kind of sounds weird. Anyways, so Luton, being the badass that he is, the skills that make mills, he rushes forward. He spent some luck points to do this, but he rushes forward. He grabs Killian with one arm, swings the door open with the other, spins around, pushes Killian through to the next carriage, closes the door behind him. It was pretty slick. Now, of course, that situation could have dragged out much longer, and I could have made it much more harrowing, and I probably should have, but I digress. So they're in the second carriage then, and they bump into a man, also wearing 1890s clothing, but he's a bit more coherent, and he introduces himself as Randolph Alexis, and Killian basically immediately pulls a gun on him, and through some tense discussions, Randolph explains that he is the one responsible for bringing this train to this dimension. He's a noted occultist, and he created a gate spell while he was on this train, in order to evade some enemies of his that were pursuing him. But the spell went awry, and this happened. The gate and some passengers got sucked in with him. It was supposed to be just him, going to another dimension, but so on and so forth. They're obviously very upset with this guy, but he explains pretty quickly that if he dies, they'll never get back home. And when you're in another dimension, you're going to tend to believe the guy, because, it's kind of Secrets of Role-Playing stuff, but that won't be a very long video. If he did die, they could probably potentially still get home, since the spell is already been cast, is just kind of the ritual being completed. They could have potentially killed him and still gotten home, but you're not going to assume that. So he says that he's been here for quite a while, since 1897, and he has a plan to get them back home. And so they follow him down the compartment, down the carriage. They pass the first compartment where there's just a bunch of clothes and bones littered all over the floor, and the bones look like they've been gnawed on. And he's just a man's got to eat. What they didn't find out was that the skeleton was his son, who, after his father disappeared, also looked into the same ritual, and his son was the one that created the train set with the gate spell on it. And so his son came to this dimension on the train and spent a little bit of time with his father, trying to figure out how to get back home before his father ate him. Yeah, the only way they would have really figured that out is if any of them were occultists, because Randolph and his son were two noted occultists, so they would have heard about all that. But I digress. The second compartment contained Mr. Arthur Butters and Mr. Henry Stanley, Arthur being very glad to see Killian. Henry was a bit more shook. He's been here a little bit longer, and when he arrived, it was just the zombies and this crazy Randolph guy who apparently ate the last guy he hung out with. So he was worried, but luckily Arthur showed up to comfort him a little bit, and now there's even more people. So, okay, things are maybe looking up for him. And then they go to the third compartment, where they find a model train set, much like the one that brought them there, except this one is made out of human organs. Intestines, livers, kidneys. Yeah. It's pretty disgusting. More sanity losses. And so, around this point, Killian is worried about the zombies that are trying to break in to get to the second carrier. He can hear them like pounding on the door or something like that. And I'm like, well, when you went through the doorway, you noticed some like arcane symbols. And so also around this point, Killian went into flashback mode from post-traumatic stress disorder. So he's full on wartime mode. And so he grabs like a femur bone from that first compartment from the dead son. And he goes and like bars the door with it. And Randolph says like, it's warded, And Killian says, wards didn't get me through the Great War. And Randolph says, what's the Great War? Because Randolph, disappeared in 1897. He's been gone for like 26 years. Something like that. And so, obviously, he'd never heard of the Great War. But Killian took this at great offense to his legacy. Which is strange, because if he's in flashback, stress, post-traumatic, flashback mode, where he's still in the war, why would he be so offended about his legacy about in the Great War? Why would he mention that the wards didn't get him through the Great War? Anyways, it was kind of humorous. So he like rushes forward and swings at Randolph with his fist, but he completely misses. So Arthur Butters kind of calms the situation down. He's like, we're no closer to getting out of here. And so they go back to the train set. And they notice there's no train there. It's just the tracks made of intestines. And so, they like, where's the locomotive? And so Randolph pulls a human heart out of his like vest pocket with like ventricles dangling and shit. And he like puts it. You can imagine all like the squishy noises and he's like, we must manually push it, but there's something wrong. I've tried it many, many times. It just doesn't work. There's something wrong with the tracks. And so the book suggests a mechanical repair or applicable science roll will suggest what's missing. It's like truth be told, it's only the two of them, and that hurt. There should be like 5 people that went on this train. So they have a whole range of skills. But it's only the two of them. Neither of them have either of those things. So what's the benefit, though, is Arthur Butters is there. And because normally, like, Arthur Butters is not meant to be in the in the thing. This is Secrets of Roll Manging, but whatever. It doesn't matter. I'll probably just skip Secrets of Roll Manging. Arthur Butters is not meant to be in this scenario. I just needed to incentivize them to go in it because I really wanted them to. So it doesn't say anything about what Arthur Butters would do if he was in there. I made all that stuff up. But I figure, this guy extensively studied the real model train set that brought them there, so he knows exactly what it looks like. That's his damn job. He's the head of the Paris Train Watchers Association. So yeah, he knows what's missing, and so I wasn't going to suggest that Arthur just walk up to them. They were like, "Oh, Arthur's here. He's got to know." And I'm like, "Yeah, all right." So he tells them that what's missing from the intestine track is elevations. The intestine track is very flat. It's completely just two-dimensional, whereas the one in real life made of, proper materials has ramps and, stuff like that. And so they gather a bunch of bones, and Arthur instructs Alexis from memory, and they get it all fitted out properly. And they're like, all right, so now we need to push the heart around the track. And so Killian and Luton start pushing it around. And at one point, Killian actually tells Henry Stanley to go watch the door. And so Henry goes over there, and he kind of just leans up against a window. And I made a point of saying that. I was like, yeah, he goes over there, and he leans up against a window. And it's like, if this were a horror movie, he's going to get grabbed. You absolutely 100% know he's going to. So I don't know if they thought about that at all when I said it. But I was like, I knew he was going to get grabbed. And so sure enough, after a while of them pushing the heart around, they hear breaking glass and a scream. And Arthur runs out into the hallway, and he's like, oh, God! They got him. Good God. And so they're like, oh, shit. So Killian immediately rushes out. He shoots at the zombie grabbing Henry, and he hits it in, the torso. And so Henry, tumbles to the floor out of the reach of the thing. And Killian rushes over. And Killian has very low strength. He's got, 35 strength, so he doesn't like to lift anything or do anything like that. And so Henry Stanley's completely just this is just picture your average, completely average, just model train nerd. That's who this guy is. And he's suddenly in another dimension being attacked by zombies. And this guy's pushing a heart around an intestine track. And it's just he is indefinitely insane. And so this guy, dressed in 1890s military garb, runs over to him and starts screaming at him. He's like, soldier, you better get up and do your damn job. Intimidate is Killian's highest skill. He loves using it all the time. So he tries to intimidate Henry Stanley. He fails. So, no, Henry Stanley's not doing anything. So Killian just abandons him. And Henry Stanley dies pretty shortly after his soul got sucked out. And, yeah. So they continue pushing the heart around the tracks. And, finally the zombies, come down the carriage, and they get to the doorway to the compartment right next to them. And so Arthur Butters gets real heroic, and he rushes forward, and he's like, get back, you vagabond, and he throws a punch, and of course it's a horrible miss, because he's Arthur freaking Butters. And so he spins around, and the zombie grabs him around the chest. And they're like, oh no! But they don't really attempt to save him, because they keep pushing the heart around. But Luton, he passes the heart over, and he fires a quick shot at the zombie, and he misses. So it grazes Arthur Butters' shoulder. Just a very slight graze. And they're like, oh God! And so Killian pushes the heart around in back and passes it back over to Luton. And I'm like, you can fire off a shot if you want. So he you can picture he tosses the heart, and he pulls out his pistol. He rolls a 100. Critical failure. Arthur Butters right in the dome. Put him out of his misery real quick. And so the spell was completed. And so the train immediately just comes back into our reality, right where it left. So, right where it left off originally. And so it lands on the real tracks, the iron tracks, and they're back on Earth. And so Killian's got one more thing to do. So he stands up again, pistol in hand, points it right at Randolph Alexis. He's like, this train is for English bloods only, none of you damn krauts. And he shoots him in the face. So if you've been keeping track, Killian on this little adventure was responsible for the death of Henry Stanley, Arthur Butters, and Randolph Alexis. So, well done. I don't know if he knows that there's no XP involved, like solo XP. That's not really a thing in Call of Cthulhu. So they're back on Earth, but they both suddenly hear the loud whistle blast of another train in front of them. So they poke their heads out the window and they see a large coal train heading straight for them. Killian's immediately like, oh shit, I'm going to jump off. And I'm like, Luton's like, is there time for me to run to the controls and, stop the train? And I'm like, and he's like, is there time for me to run to the controls and if I can't stop the train to jump off? And I'm like, I can't tell you that. There's no way you'd know that. And so he really pondered it and I was like, is he going to do it? It's crazy. Because when he got to the front of the train, there's no way Luton knows how to stop a train. You're not going to come to me in that moment and be like, oh yeah, my character actually 20 years ago, he actually worked as a train driver. I'm not going to buy that shit. So there's a bunch of levers. It seems to imply that there's no one big control lever that's labeled. It's like turn train off. There's just a whole fleet of levers. So no, you get up there, you'd basically be screwed, and you'd probably die. I don't know if I'd do that. I'd probably make him take more damage, but he'd still have the chance to jump off. Just as the train collides, so you get hit with a piece of metal or something. I don't know. There'd be some punishment for that. But anyways, they both decided to just jump off. They take some minor damage. And the trains collide. Big, huge wreckage. You can imagine. You've seen movies. You know what it looks like. And after a little bit of wandering around and some rolls, Luton finally rolls a 3 on his natural world. And so I'm like, you're 60 miles northwest of London. They're like, oh, shit. We're back in England. And so I could have made that a lengthy thing if I was very boring. But I kind of really sped through it. I was like, all right, you get to an inn nearby, you get to another town, you get on a train to London, so on and so forth. And then, they went to their homes, they got new clothes, stuff like that. And they decided to pay a visit to Mehmet Makrat's shop. I was very surprised that they even remembered this. But they went to Mehmet Makrat's shop, they broke in, and again, we kind of fast forward through a lot of this, because again, Ziggy had been sitting there for an hour or so. And, long story short, they didn't find anything in Mehmet's shop. The only odd things they found were, there were no books at all, and there was really no luggage at all. So it almost seems like the shop had been just abandoned, kind of. Like he just packed up and left. He found his ledgers, his ledger books for the shop. But really, the only purpose of the ledgers is to talk about the train set. Because they're supposed to go to this shop very early on in the campaign. Because they're supposed to be very curious about this guy that was murdered 3 times in one night. It's this whole thing. And so they find this ledger that leads them into this whole Doom Train scenario. But they go there after the Doom Train scenario. It's crazy. But I was rolling accounting when he's looking through his ledger. And he wasn't really looking for any, anything. He was just scanning for names, but it was like rolling a county. He rolls like a 3 or a 2 or something like. He rolls something crazy. And so he's like, you know, he got so excited he thought he was going to unravel the secrets of the campaign. And it's just like, we just had another thing like this with the, you know, Ziggy's chemistry roll. And it's just like, I wish I could just tell you crazy things, but I can't. There's nothing there. Like Mehmet has been dealing with Julius Smith this whole time. Oh my god! You know, I can't just make shit up. So he was disappointed, but what do you want me to do, man? And so then they got back on the other trains. They took the ferry and they went back and they arrived back in Paris. They met back up with Richard, who had just been kind of chilling the whole time, and they told him their story. He believed them, and he's very shocked, and he's sad that Arthur Butters is dead. And that's pretty much it. They're like, well, I guess we're done in France. It's time to get on the Orient Express, and that's where we ended. So, yeah, you know, just a fun little mini session. Nothing too crazy to really talk about. Obviously, it was nothing to do with anything. I think they all realized that was completely pointless, but it was fun. Is that pointless? Is that pointless if it's fun? I don't know, maybe. It depends on what they think. But yeah, like none of them really died. None of them really, I mean, they took some damage from jumping off the train, but they basically healed that on their trip back to Paris. Because it's like, whatever, who cares? They took some sanity loss, and they would have regained sanity if they had saved Henry Stanley, or I would have even allowed Arthur Butters. But no, they both died. They completely failed anything. They didn't gain anything from this whole scenario, but if it was entertaining, good. If not, then I apologize. It was entertaining for me. So yeah, next time we'll have hopefully a full session with a full group. They'll get on the Orient Express, I would imagine, and they will be leaving France to head to the first destination on the route, which is Lausanne, Switzerland. Fortunately, because that's exactly where the investigators want to go, to investigate a man who sent a letter to the Lorians by the name of Edgar Wellington, who seems to know a bit more than most about the simulacrum and the scrolls. What an exciting meeting that will be. But that's going to have to be next time. So I hope you enjoyed the little Doom Train scenario. Very gross, very crazy, probably a little creepy, but exciting. Again, just think of The Mummy. I just watched The Mummy Returns the other night, so that's in my head for this campaign. But anyways, my name is Mang. This has been Roll Manging for Horror on the Orient Express. I'll see you fine folks next week.